And welcome to another episode of the Leather and Lace podcast, where we intend to disrupt the narratives of separation and seek common ground and unity in our ever polarizing world. I'm Joanna, and I am joined by my co-host, Ken. Hey, Ken.
Hey, Joanna, how's it going?
Great. So this week, we are diving into the topic of education and the masculine shadow. This will be a conversation about how our education system has become unbalanced and segregated from its original purpose and intent. It was once designed, to foster democratic participation and reduce inequality and to promote moral and social well-being. But today's system has become hyper-focused on standardization and economic output, which are traits of the shadow masculine, along with fierce competition and rigid hierarchies. And unfortunately, this shift has come at the cost of creativity, emotional development, and holistic growth, or in other words, this shift shows the neglect and almost outright dismissal of the divine feminine. And this imbalance, I feel, and we feel, reflects a deeper issue in our societal priorities where utility and profit often take precedence over well-being and wholeness. And I think, hopefully, maybe, honestly, most of us feel that that needs to change. So, how about you get comfortable and explore with us how we can reimagine education for a more balanced and connected world, which we'll do after this. All right. Hello again. To start things off, allow me to give you an overview of what we'll be discussing today so that you have a general idea on why this topic is important and what you may get out of this conversation. Because even if you don't have any school-aged children or aren't currently in school yourself or teaching at one, the topic of education does have an impact on the whole, which includes you. So, why is this topic important? Well, by exploring the imbalances in our current systems of education, we can better understand the deeper values they reflect and how those values influence the world that we're collectively building together. And hopefully, we're improving the world that we're building. And and the problem is when education prioritizes standardization and economic output over things like creativity, emotional intelligence, and holistic well-being, what it does is it perpetuates a cycle where individuals are valued for their utility rather than their humanity. And I hope most of us can agree that that ain't it. Okay, so we'll begin with a quick look at the history of education so we can understand what initially motivated the creation of the education system and why. And then we'll look at the ways we began to shift away from our original goals and intentions, which will help us understand how we got to where the heck we are today with the education system. And then once we have a good understanding on the original ideals that inspired the education system and how our current system has veered far off the course, we'll explore what each of us can do to right the direction of this ship and move towards a more holistic approach to education. So, can you start us off by giving us a quick overview on the history of education and what motivated the creation of the system in the first place?
Sure thing. Hey, Jana, thanks for the introduction. And
Hey.
this is going to be such a fun topic. I'm a father of three and have been watching the education system in our country well since I was a student in school, but really for the last 30 years as my own kids have gone through their progressive educational experiences. And even in that time, I've seen what I believe to be some evolvement in the way that education is provided to kids in our country. But we could really take this back hundreds of years in the United States alone. And certainly, if we look at this across any culture or any nation, you're going to probably see a similar degree of evolvement and shift, which is really what we're talking about here. when it comes to the way that education is provided to children in general. We want to take this back to like the 1600s, 1700s time frame. Of course, in the United States, the focus was more so on religion, on teaching the
Mhm.
the tenets of the Bible and Christianity, and providing education that was more practical, those types of things that an individual needed in order to be proficient in farming or construction or
Mhm.
whatever other skills were specifically needed for the day-to-day operation of the household or the community. And then over the course of maybe 100, 150 years or so, that began to evolve into somewhat more standardization, where you would have small schoolhouses in a community, for example, that might teach all the children from 5 to 15, 16, 17 years old in one little schoolhouse taught by one teacher.
Mhm.
And while there might not be standardization from one town to the next, there was at least some level of, ideally, some level of continuity for individual children and families within the same community as they procured their education. And then we began to move into more of the producing and industrialized age toward the latter part of the 1800s, early 1900s. And we started to see that probably that the differences between those little individual schoolhouses were leading to quite probably a few unsustainable differences in the levels of education, understanding, productivity, et cetera, with individuals that were working in new factories and designing new
Mhm.
technologies and architecting new buildings and engineering. And so I'm sure the minds at the time said, we need to standardize this. We need to start coming up
Mhm.
with a model that provides some level of consistency and reliability in the way that we're training and teaching our young people. And so, even going back to, uh, let's see, I'm going to have to reference my notes on this one. The mid
Yeah.
1800s, late 1800s, the Horace Mann Common School movement was one of the big movements in which we began to lay down specific standards in things like history and English, composition, grammar, mathematics, specifically saying that education, we recognize, is the great equalizer in society. And overall, if we standardize this could be the means by which we provide normalization, ultimately, hopefully reducing poverty and providing at least a minimum standard of understanding and therefore life experience in our citizenry. Um, we've gotten to a point, however, where we've grown a society and we grew into a largely industrialized producer culture over the course of the 1900s. And as we've evolved through the last several decades, we've started to recognize that we've ushered a lot of that productivity outside of our country, whether we
Mhm.
agree with that as a strategy or not, for many different reasons. We've taken the industrialist aspect of the reasons that we standardized a lot of these types of systems of understanding, and we've given it to other cultures, other nations to do the vast majority of the production of our goods. And so it's time for us to look at the fact that the producing motivations that led to the reason that we created a standardized educational system that we have are no longer conditions that exist in this country. We're evolving more now into more specific scientific
Mhm.
and technological and mathematical types of careers that do make sense to have a high degree of standardization and specificity within, especially the university environment. But those are, even to this day, less than 25% of the overall vocational makeup of our country. So 75% of our students are in what might be considered vocations or work environments that potentially could have a little bit more flexibility or lack of standardization, if you will, in the way that these individuals are trained. Um, 4 or 5 years ago, we had the COVID pandemic
Mm.
hit the world, right? And this opened up a new avenue for being involved and perceiving the educational system the way that it is for so many people across the
Right.
world. For the first time, many children got to experience, or had to in some ways, had to experience remote learning, where they were outside of the classroom due to the pandemic, and now they were in an environment where their parents or local caretaker was actually seeing and witnessing what the hour to hour and day to day education was that was being provided for that specific child. And people began to sort of raise their eyebrows a little bit sometimes and go, wait a minute, I've not had that much specificity into what my child was learning up until this point,
Mhm.
but now I'm starting to see the reality of this, and I'm curious. I'm asking questions about what's really going on here. So we've gotten to a point now where folks are starting to ask those questions, but not a lot of new solutions yet have been brought to the table about what can we do to address the issue, the fact that we've got an epidemic of detachment and boredom and attention deficit issues, and now we're starting to see an increase in behavioral issues, even violence in our even at our elementary school levels across this country. And I think all of these issues taken together point to a system that is at least open itself to, if not being ripe for some type of major reform in the way that we design and provide education to kids in this country. So,
Yeah.
uh,
It seems as though the way you've described kind of the transition of or the history of education and the path of if like if education was a baby, this is how it's grown. This is his childhood, and now it's moved into adolescence and grown up as an adult. It feels like it's kind of moved from idealism to pragmatism. Like the earlier goals of education were centered around morality and learning how to read the Bible and being a good citizen to be able to practice to participate in democracy. And those well-meaning goals, and which are good for our society, right? To have functioning citizens to participate in our democracy, they have given way to now to preparing students and citizens for economic roles in a profit-driven society. And in doing so and focusing on measurable outcomes to support whatever studies have taken, like that will support our profit-driven society to have enough cogs in the machine, so to speak. Um, these are driven by economic and global competition, and which definitely overshadows more holistic educational ideals, like being a person capable of participating in democracy and being creative and feeling whole. We've kind of taken that out of our education initiatives and what we consider to be valuable. And I understand, I agree with you that there should be a focus on things like science and mathematics or STEM, right, and engineering, because a lot of our, progress is reliant on evolution and progress in technology and understanding and science. It's very innate to the human experience to be explorers, in understanding our world. So I totally understand that for sure. And the thing is, in having this discussion, we're not here to attack a system, right? We understand the value of education, and we understand that's why it's important to understand the initial goals of starting our education system. But I think it is important to explore it in its current state and to be honest about how well it's serving our children and overall our population. And I think, and I think you share this idea as well, that this hyper focus on STEM, though
mm,
important, often overlooks other initiatives and learning goals that center around creativity, inspiring creativity, critical thinking, and emotional intelligence. Whenever there's budget issues, the first things to go are the music program, the art program,
yeah.
field trips, because there's no way we can waver in math, science, and English. And not to say that we can waver on those, but it's equating things like art and music at the same level,
Mm,
I think is important. And that's what we mean by having an imbalance and being overtaken by the masculine shadow because our goals have shifted, and it's about creating, basically soldiers in the front line of capitalism or something. I don't mean to be dramatic, but it is like that is your function. This is your purpose as a citizen in this country, is your productivity.
Hmm.
And that takes away the humanity, that takes away the value of just who you are as a being and your importance, because we have populations in our society that can't be productive. They have learning disabilities, or they're elderly, or they have physical disabilities. Where do they fit in this picture? They're factored in as a burden to society because we haven't acknowledged the value of being human.
Hmm.
And that's reflective of our educational goals and how we structure our education system. We take out the humanity. And that's why we seem to be proposing that we need to balance and move away from the shadow masculine by first acknowledging that it's here and that it exists and that it invaded our education system and priorities. And then to balance that by integrating more initiatives that align with divine feminine
Hmm.
and have more art and creativity and basically empowering our children to not just be products, but to be explorers and to
Yeah.
share their findings openly and safely. And yeah, and so how do we move from one to the other? I don't know. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this is again to point to the history just for a second. I think this is not a new thing in human history. New civilizations get established and they build defenses and then they start to build productivity and make sure that everybody's got a place to live and enough food to eat. And then they hit
Hmm.
a plateau where they've basically baselined the operant methodologies of the civilization. They feel like they're adequately defended and there are no additional significant threats against their borders for the most part. And then they sort of hit a threshold. And many times civilizations will degrade over a period of time because they don't reach the next tier of evolvement. But sometimes they hit what has been known in various forms as a renaissance period, where they start to realize, wait a minute, we've taken care of all of the, if you think of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we've taken care of
Hmm.
all of the
Hmm.
the safety and survival and security needs, and now we can start going up and starting talking about some of the developmental and even self-actualization type needs, where we're looking at growing and developing in increasing levels of complexity and individuality, not just the individuals, but the groups within that society. America and our Western culture at large has not hit in any ways yet that type of Renaissance period where we start to, the way you're referring to it, I agree with, is bringing in more of the divine
Hmm.
feminine characteristics of creativity and compassion and empathy and the non-tangible factors that typically are seen as
Hmm.
these are the elements of society that just stay home and get taken care of in the house, and then we go out and actually do work to produce the things that are valuable as a society.
Hmm.
We're not yet recognizing that those qualities in the workplace and in the creative environment actually grow and build the complexity of the systems, the architecture, the artwork, the music, all the things that we value in our society would actually be enhanced. Even the technology would be enhanced tremendously if we started to build
Hmm.
in characteristics that are more caring and compassionate and focused on what feels good and right and beautiful and beneficial to the individual. As an example, on the technological side, there are a lot of technologies that are coming out now that have to do with the use of sound and light and vibration and frequency in just the beauty and joy and wonderment of the human experience. The incorporation of those in design elements requires a level of connectivity and empathy and synchronicity to the individual, being synchronized to their universe in a way that no computer or oscilloscope can necessarily measure. Like, these are intangible factors that require a level of connectiveness in order to be able to actually incorporate into even technological design elements. There are individuals now being brought into uh, working on music and design and production in even our highest budget movie development companies, and
Mhm.
bringing in those, again, more feminine factors in order to create an essence, a feel, a tangible, an intangibility that blends in with the production and design of those artistic elements that you can't do just with a masculine focused go out, do design, architect, and logic this thing to completion.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for our children? Right now we have a system that over especially the last 20 years, I've witnessed as a parent specifically the increase in focus on not only standardizing curriculum, but an increase in teaching to very specific standardized test models. And a lot of this happens because education systems don't get cheaper as the days go by.
Hmm.
We need newer facilities. We need more technology. We need um, gradually increasing or sometimes rapidly increasing budgets in those school systems. And so the schools are fighting for resources coming down from the federal and the state level. The way that they are being assessed, and largely, at least in our country right now, as far as their merit for receiving those funds, is based on the aggregate
Hmm.
pass fail of these standardized testing systems within each one of the schools. So teachers are very, very highly motivated to teach specifically the information in just those areas of the test where their students are going to be tested. And again, those are they have nothing to almost exclusively to do with the creative, the um, the again the more feminine type factors that we're talking about here. They're more linear, they're more logical, they're more masculine focused uh, STEM related subject matter that those tests are made up of. And so as a result, the um, the things that fall off the plate are exactly what you're talking about, Joanna. It's like
Hmm.
we lose funding and we lose focus on the things like the arts, the music, the things that if you ask any kid, what do you enjoy doing most about school? The vast majority of them don't say it's, their math class or their whatever. They enjoy the art and the
And
music
friends.
and friends and maybe going to
Yeah.
lunch and socializing and those types of experiences. So again, we've hit a point in society where we've we've outsourced production in our society. We've come up with a model that says technology and science and engineering are very important to us, but we recognize that the vast majority of our population is not going to be participating in those things. And so we've got a large contingent of our graduating high schoolers and even collegiate students who are sort of left out in the cold trying to figure out, where do I fit in? Where's my purpose-based place in this society now? How am I going to be able to contribute? What is it that this society needs? We've devalued We've
Hmm.
devalued art, even within the context of incorporating it into architecture. If you look at the buildings, the houses that are being designed for people to live in this country, they've gotten more and more basic and box-like and without beauty and design elements that offer creativity and appreciation and the elements of beauty within life. We're basically just putting boxes together and saying, "Hey, go live in that cardboard
And
box
hope
for
it
20 or
works.
30 years and hope it works." And so we've lost the character, even in the design of buildings and museums and libraries, and everything is square and walled off. And so we've come up to this point where we've started to recognize, like, we've created a production-based society that works. It achieved its ends through the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and into the 90s maybe, but as we cross the millennium threshold, we're starting to recognize that the factors that grew the society into what it is right now are perhaps no longer the same factors that we need to be teaching and training for future producers in this world.
Yeah. I I think it's also something worthy of time. In fact, it could be a necessity, is to see how our educational system and how it's set up is a reflection of our own collective values as a society. So
Mm,
in society, people who have higher education degrees are viewed to be more important or can participate in the important things of life, like
yeah,
governance and leadership and having opinions, right? We have to be like, oh, where'd you go to school before you for people to listen to your opinion.
mm,
And 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 I think that's not necessarily a positive thing for us as a society. And I get it. I understand the meaning and the value of education because in the even in its current state because it does help meet the need of a workforce preparation. But I feel that because of these shadow masculine traits of competition and hierarchy and rigidity, we are not even able to feel that we have time and space to explore how this is not a good system.
mm,
It's like, no, we don't have time. Nobody has time to make
yeah,
changes. We got to do the next thing because we're in competition with other countries. We're in competition all the time. And we don't have time to stop. Why don't we feel like we have time to stop, take a break, look around and be like, is this fucking working? Are
yeah,
we doing the right thing? And I feel like that's again, it's like a reflection of how we're managing our children and their education because we're not giving them time. I was very disturbed and I never thought about this before because I am also a mom. My daughter is 8. And in kindergarten, or they didn't have any homework, right? They introduced homework in the first grade.
mm,
And I was like, homework is dumb. Like, what is homework? They're already in school all day. And now we have to manage homework. And I understand teaching her time, setting aside time for work, then play and everything, but she's done her work. She's been in
mm,
school. Home is supposed to be for home. And I was like thinking, oh, wow, they're doing the training early of
yeah,
like, you should take your work home with you. Work
right.
should always be a part of your mind. And you can't,
Productivity is most important.
yes, don't
Mm,
waste your time being home and enjoying your home life
yeah,
in your home time. And so I feel like homework should not be a thing
yeah.
in
There's
my
so many
mind.
there's so many ways that we've taken away the childlike aspect of being a child. The educational
Hmm.
system is not the only place where we're guilty of this, but it is where kids spend 30 or 40 hours a week of their time. And so from a time-based perspective, it's probably the place where we could make the most difference if we ever did decide to sit down and renovate the system as it is. To your point about we never get time to sit and reflect or reset.
Hmm.
I personally feel that that's what the COVID situation, if we want to look at it from any positive
Yeah.
perspective, for me and my family, it at least gave us that chance to step out of the current model and
Hmm.
to do things differently for a year or two. And as a result of that, we actually chose to become a homeschool family for 3 years after, even though we didn't have to. We decided to homeschool for fourth, fifth, and
Hmm.
sixth grade for my daughter. And it was not an easy transition. It wasn't an entirely fun and simple experience, but we did learn some things through that experience that I feel are worthy of at least incorporation somewhat into this type of discussion. Um, the first thing that I noticed when I began trying to homeschool a fourth grader was that she didn't, as you were talking about, like she didn't want to do any work at all. It didn't matter what the subject was. Her opinion of being given work by some external adult, whether it was a teacher at school or me now as her teacher at home, was you're telling me what to do. And I don't care if I am interested in the information. You telling me what to do makes me not want to do that thing. So the first several months I spent battling and fighting and coming up with what my male linear thinking brain was the way to respond to this issue was, okay, well, I'll just make schedules. And that way she'll be able to see what she's going to do and when she knows when she has to wake up, when she's going to eat breakfast, when she gets to go outside, what schedule, what class she's going to do at what time. And then that'll make her want to do all these things because there'll be predictability and repeatability to it. And that shit didn't work at all. Because now now she's looking at it. Not only are you telling me what to do, but you're telling me what to do every minute of every single day of 5 days in a row. Like you've now constrained me even more than you had before. So she fought even harder against it. And then we got to the Christmas break of that first year, and I sat down, chatted with my wife, and I was like pulling my hair out. I don't know what to do here. And she's like, shit, I don't know. Let her control the schedule. And so I tried that. We started that in the spring semester of her fourth grade year, and I started letting her have a little bit of control over first off just what time you wake up, when you eat breakfast, what subjects that you do, in what order, and then being able to select like what reading assignments that you do, some of the in class and some of the after class and field trip assignments, that kind of thing. And ultimately, by the end of the fourth grade year, she was on the weekends sitting down on a Sunday and writing out her entire schedule for the entire next week and deciding what she was going to do and in what order. And even within a single week, she had the ability to say on a Monday afternoon, if she was tired or didn't feel like doing science, she could look at me and say, can I just not do science today? And I would say, yeah, but you know, you got to make it up at some other time, right? And she would say, yeah, okay. And then she would do it. She would take care of it at some other time, knowing that she had been given the personal
Mm,
authority to make that selection to change the way that the responsibility had been architected or levied upon her. And by the end of
mm.
that year, she was looking at me going, hey, I'm ready to start my fifth grade homeschool stuff. Can we just start it like early in the summer so I don't have to go
Oh,
as long
wow.
here? Like she had the entire experience of school had become a completely different paradigm in her mind because it was hers. It wasn't me telling her minute to minute, day to day what to do and how well to do it and what grades to get or any of that kind of stuff. It was here's the curriculum.
Mm,
Here's whatever level of boundaried flexibility that I'm comfortable giving you. And the cool thing is, as we went into fifth grade and then into sixth grade, the degree of flexibility
mm,
grew. Like the things that I could give her autonomy on got wider and wider and wider as I saw her taking care of more and more responsibilities on her own and not being asked. And so by the time we got to the end of sixth grade, she looked at me and said, school's easy. I don't have a problem with any of the academics, but I'm missing out on the social experience. I want to choose myself to go back to public school because I want to start making more friends and interacting with people and actually having more of a social life. So same principle applies. I said it's your life, it's your education. If that's what you want to do, then you do it. And she started seventh grade and made friends and runs her schedule exactly the same way. Now she still has to go to the classes in the order that they give her at school, but she has this mindset now that says, I'm owning this. I'm responsible for it. I have to bring my books home. I have to, whatever,
mm-hmm.
keep track of my homework and turn my stuff in on time. I have, swear to you, not one time in 5 months now had to tell this kid to do her homework or turn her assignments in on time or keep up with the requirements as they're being given to her by her teachers. And if she misses something, she feels bad about it and then goes and works on it after hours or on the weekend to make sure that she catches up on time. This is now 100% entirely her responsibility. So I use this personal reflection to say, like, right now, our educational system is being levied upon the child.
Mm,
It's the curriculum is given by either a school board or some group of individuals that says this is the school curriculum for this particular district or school. Everybody's going to follow it with no exceptions. And the teacher teaches their lesson to 30 kids and gives them their assignment and their homework, and all the kids are expected to always do the stuff that the teachers respond are requiring of them in a certain period of time with very little
mm.
flexibility. We're not building personally responsible, accountable future leaders.
No,
We're creating followers.
followers for sure.
And and kids have the capability of leading themselves, of being responsible, of organizing themselves, but they're not going to take that away from somebody two or three times their height who stands over them and booms with a
Hmm.
voice that says, do this because I'm telling you to. They have to be given
Right.
that that flexibility and be granted the the ability to say, "Hey, I'm going to give this a shot." and allowed to make sometimes a lot of mistakes in the doing of it. And eventually they'll get to the point where they realize I'm either going to do this on my own and do it right, or I'm going to fall behind. But in either case, it's going to be my responsibility. It's going to be my fault. I'm the one that's going to be seen as less than sufficient or deficient if I don't take action to keep up with this. It's
My
putting the responsibility.
responsibility. Yeah.
It's putting the
Um,
responsibility on
yeah.
their shoulders, you know. And I'm not trying to suggest that every single child would resonate with that type of approach, but if we truly want kids graduating from high school, going into college, and graduating from college with the understanding of life and choosing of purpose and a life track is 100% your
Hmm.
responsibility. It's not your parents, it's not your teachers, it's not your boss, it's no governmental authority. It's not some spiritual awakening that's going to eventually give you this magical
Hmm.
blessing of, divine purpose where you now understand what you're called to the world to do. It might happen to a few lucky people, but for most of us, like you have to create that your own. And some of us, it takes 20 or 30 or 40 years to eventually get to the point of recognizing, like, oh, I have to come up with my own purpose. I have to create my own life path. I have to determine what resonates most with me. My entire point with this is that building that type of mentality into the educational system from the very beginning
Hmm.
would alleviate many of these disassociation and behavioral issues and socialization type issues. A kid that feels empowered and feels responsible for their own education wants to be involved with other kids in the classroom because they feel empowered and excited about sharing their ideas and their accomplishments. When they're being told what to do, they just want to get through the task and get it off their plate. That's all they care about. They don't want to share. They don't want to communicate. They don't want to partner. They don't want to do any of that. But you give them the creative responsibility, and then they open up like a little community and they start getting along and they start playing with each other and figuring out how to design and create and produce deliverables that are truly their own and not something they're doing to satisfy some external entity.
Yeah. And I would argue that that type of output that is empowered is more useful to society than cogs who have been
Mm,
told what to do and are now programmed to do a certain way or certain believe certain things and then perpetuate a broken system.
yeah.
And so, like I was saying earlier, that how our current education system is a reflection of our values, but it's also a reflection of our beliefs. I loved your story. I loved what you've been able to do and to transform the meaning even of education for your child is beautiful. And I think that what you're saying, yes, the critics would be like, oh, well, how can we implement that on a nationwide basis? And that
Mm,
already to me tells me that one of the major beliefs in society that we have is that we need a parent in our
hmm.
government, and that
Right.
yeah, it's not possible, maybe governed on a federal level, like because now you're already overwhelming yourself with it, and now no change happens, and now we just keep doing the same old bullshit.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a way through this and the way that you've engaged with your child and to see and that there's a need, like she didn't want to be told what to do.
Hmm.
That's like the horror to every parent, you know. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, just do it, okay.
Hmm.
Um, but instead of playing that card, I am the authority figure and you have to do this because it's what we do in society.
Yeah.
You didn't do that.
Right.
You you allowed yourself to explore and to find a positive way to change this because change or even acknowledging that there's a problem, it doesn't mean that we have to reject the masculine entirely. We just have to acknowledge that it's become a little bit toxic and a little
Yeah.
bit shadowy in its representation and in its manifestation. There's too much focus on hierarchy, too much focus on control and standardization, which to me is just like so homogenous.
Yeah.
Reality is not homogenous. We are not homogenous. We are very diverse. And so we need diverse or we need solutions that allow for diversity. So change doesn't mean the rejection of masculine. it's about harmonizing the masculine structure with feminine nurturance. And I think you were able
Hmm.
to do that with your daughter. And it's not that you allowed her to do whatever she wanted, and then
Right.
now you've lost complete control, which is the fear of the
Hmm.
masculine, right? That you're
Yeah.
going to lose all control to the feminine.
Yeah.
You know, she was still able to understand that there are things that need to get done. And she just had a little bit more freedom to do that in the way that made more sense to her and felt more right for her.
Yeah.
And it's about releasing a little bit of that control and allowing, and that allowance is very feminine, that there is someone else that can maybe find a better path for themselves. And that's what you did with your daughter. And I think that's really, really beautiful. And I think it also is a reflection of how this toxic idea of that we need governance and that we need a parent and we need, to uh, be governed in how we educate our children, especially on a federal level. That's
Hmm.
insanity,
Yeah.
considering the diversity of people. And so I think for me, if we're going to offer solutions, first solution is to decentralize education, to get rid of the Department of Education. Oh my gosh, what a horrific thing to say.
Whoa.
Oh God, we need our government daddy. No, but it's so essential. Why not let education be managed at least, at the very least, on a state level? At
Yeah.
least, like the smaller it gets, then you were able to do that in your house, which
Hmm.
you can see the results that happened. Now, I'm not obviously most parents probably, given the structure of our society and the focus on profit and productivity, and just the way we've structured our economics, it makes it very difficult for parents to be available. And so more and more, the management of raising a child is handed over to the state, which that's a whole new, a different conversation altogether.
Yeah.
But the fact that we're kind of in this paradigm of we need a federal, in like a federal level to guide us in how we educate children, and in the guise of its protection for kids to make sure that they have an equal ability to function in the world. Okay, look around. Has
Yeah.
that been working? Can we
Right.
seriously say that there's equality in our
Look at
education
our
system?
look at
Most
how
people, yeah,
how burned out our teachers are as one
yeah.
overall measure of this. How many teachers are leaving the career field because they can't even deal with the disciplinary issues and the behavioral issues of their students anymore. Like young teachers are spending
Hmm.
4 or 5, 6 years in school training for this job. They go do it for a year or two, and then they go. I know multiple individuals that have done this, and then they go, I just can't take it, And
Yeah,
so,
it's so sad. It's so sad. They spend money out of their own pockets to provide supplies. And something
mhm,
that I noticed too that I'm like, what the heck is there's always fundraisers, there's always PTA and all are good things, right? Because it's like community level. But
mhm,
if we already lost our rights to manage our own education to the government, the federal government, why shouldn't they provide all of this stuff for us? It's like
mhm,
still, it's like, oh, if you want to have a music program, if you want to have art, you have to support the PTA. You have to go to this restaurant on Wednesday night and they'll donate the proceeds. It's like we're still having to come out of our own pockets after
yeah,
paying the taxes that is supposed to take care of this. So
mhm,
how about this? We just give us our money back
mhm.
and let us handle it anyway on our own,
Yeah,
right?
there's a model that some folks are starting to kind of come up with within specific communities or even neighborhoods where if there are enough stay-at-home parents, and especially if they've got some level of um, advanced education or professional background, they're creating community schools where a group of children will go from house to house to house for different subjects throughout the day, and they're taught now by 4 or 5 or 6 different parents, but who have practical
Mhm.
backgrounds and understanding, and they're getting a less homogeneous education than they would if they sat in front of the same teacher for 6 or 7 hours a day in an elementary school environment. You're getting exposed to folks who have gone out and actually lived real life experience in vocations and education and different types of functions, and hearing from those individuals about what it's like to live in the real world, rather than, and nothing against teachers, but rather than against only getting a perspective from somebody who's only ever been in just the academic environment. That's the majority of our kids are being taught by people who have only ever experienced being an academician. They've not gone out and actually lived life in the real world to be able to provide that sort of practical, reflective
And
experience
even
about.
if they wanted to and they were capable of providing more support, emotional support, they're limited.
Right,
They're not
right.
allowed
Yeah.
to
So
connect with their students in that way.
exactly. So allowing and even potentially looking at providing funding for these community-based programs would lighten the load on the, especially the public school education teachers that right now have class loads in the 28, 30,
Mhm.
35 kid range, which in, you imagine fourth,
Mhm.
fifth graders, you got 35 of them in a room. I can't even take two of them at one time, much less 35 of them at once.
Yeah, it's a
Uh,
lot. We're asking a lot.
yeah,
We are. But because
yeah,
we have this mindset that you just make it work because it's about just getting the job done, no time to reflect. This
yeah,
is how it is because this is what daddy government said, blah,
right.
blah. Okay. I understand using terms like daddy government makes me sound like some crazy person, but it is true. Don't
But but
mind
but
the
that
way I'm
is a
communicating the message here. It's
that
like,
is a that is to me that is a reflection though of the toxic masculinity, is we still have this
yes.
very centralized, very I need to control and standardize and
Hmm.
and have authority over this entire system, rather than loosening up and
Or
allowing
yeah,
a greater degree of flexibility. And that is what the feminine is the
allowance.
relaxation and
Yeah.
allowance, and actually recognizing like you're going to get more dynamic product, more innovation, more creativity, more growth, more probably more mental health stability in your students as well, because they're now allowed to pursue things that they're actually interested in, rather than, like we were talking about before, things that they're
Yeah.
specifically told to focus
And
on.
if we were to look again at your situation with your daughter, if you just had this mindset in the same way we have this mindset that we can't do it without that kind of controlling guidance from the federal government, and
Hmm.
you did the same thing and kind of aligned with that mentality and said, no, you're not capable. You are not capable
Hmm.
of taking ownership of your education because we need to get this done. A, B, and
Yeah,
C needs to happen, or the world's gonna fall apart. It
right,
seems like everything is such an existential threat.
right.
And but you didn't. You did not do that. You released your bit of control and trusted that your daughter, who is a separate entity from you and has her own agency,
Hmm.
that she could handle a little bit of this responsibility. And
Yeah,
what happened was incredible.
yeah,
She did it. She was able to do it. And so for those of us who have legit fear of like, but if we don't have management and control, how will we ensure the safety of all our children and how will they be educated? It's like, don't you have more confidence in us as human beings? Don't we have confidence? Why are we giving that power away all the
yeah.
time? It's become so commonplace to do that that we don't even recognize that that's what we're doing.
I would
And
even offer
so,
to
yeah.
our school systems or our teachers, you don't have to convert to some type of new model entirely overnight.
Mhm.
You could experiment, do like a 1 day a week or 1 day a month even, where the kids are just given latitude to build their own schedules and design their own curriculum for 1 day, and then just watch, just go see what happens. If it's a complete disaster and they all sit there looking at their cell phones and stare at the walls and do nothing, at least at least you've tried it. But I will tell you personally, the vast majority of them, if you give them some level of basic responsibility, like you need to get this done, but you can do it at any time during the day, and you can go play, you can eat snacks, you can hang out with each other, you can whatever you want to do, as long as you don't hurt anybody else. At your timeline, you need to get this small thing done. Most of the kids, the vast majority of them are going to go, "Ooh, I can breathe. Now I can burn off my energy. I can hang out with my friends. I have flexibility. I'm not compressed into this rigid, tight timeline and schedule. Yeah, I'll meet you halfway. I'll take care of that little
Mhm.
assignment you asked me to do and get it knocked out when I feel like it, when I feel like I can sit down and focus." Which, oh, by the way, this is a whole other conversation, but we're all on different circadian and focal rhythms throughout the day. our
Hmm.
diets and our sleep patterns and our susceptibility to light and frequencies and all those other things make a difference as to when each one of us is actually capable of focusing and paying attention. Loosening up on the schedule gives the child the ability to say, all right, 8:30 to 9 is my best focus time, or 2:45 to 3:15 is my best focus time. You're letting them determine when they can be most focused on tasks and
Yeah.
requirements. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I feel that because we've definitely identified a lot of the issues, and I love what you did with your daughter, but it is, we'll say, a little bit unrealistic to expect that of everybody or something
Hmm.
similar to that, because you had to devote a lot of your time, and not everybody has that time. Um, but before I get into that of like a potential how we can move forward, because we don't want to just complain and say a bunch of shit that's wrong. We want
Hmm.
to find and offer practical solutions and what we can do individually to move towards that goal if you also believe that there's a problem in our
Hmm.
education system. So
Yeah.
first I want to say something about you know how we are powerful people, powerful beings, and we can take ownership and we will end up aligning with each other without any outside help or authority making us feel afraid of what could happen if we had control in our own hands.
Hmm.
I noticed this as a young person when I was still in school. It's like whenever the teacher doesn't assign seats, right? You know how like sometimes they assign
Hmm.
seats or sometimes they don't. I've had teachers that did not assign seats and just said you can sit wherever you want. And so for a first couple weeks, maybe there's a lot of shifting, but eventually we all just start picking the same seats every day
Yeah.
anyway.
Right. Yeah.
And to me, I just remember noticing that and thinking about it. I was like, that's interesting.
Hmm.
We still assign our own seats. But now thinking about it, it means so much more to me now of like we still as a people will come to an order of
Yeah.
things, and it's
Absolutely.
so much more empowering when we have chosen it ourselves and
Yeah.
not be told to do it. So when your
Right.
daughter said I don't like to be told what to do, you can interpret that as like teenage angst or
Hmm.
whatever, and it could be right, but deep down we're all that way.
Yeah.
We don't like to be told what to do because we
That's
have
right.
our own makeup, our own vibration, our own interests, and we
Yeah.
like freedom is our birthright.
It is.
It's our fucking birthright. And things that don't align with that can feel very off. And but when it's done enough times, it becomes the norm to be subjugated, which I do believe we're all subjugated and we're not allowed to be free. We're not given the empowerment needed to feel empowered. And
Hmm.
so when I say things like we got to integrate more feminine into the education system, it's almost like we need that mother to encourage us that we are powerful. She did not birth weak ass motherfuckers. Sorry to curse so much. I'm feeling very passionate suddenly.
You're bringing that passion
She
out. I love it.
she's like, "No, bitch, you are
Yeah.
powerful. You can take ownership of this.
Yeah.
You're growing. We have
Yeah.
grown. We are growing. Can we please take ownership back?" And so as a way to do that, um it's again, we say this all the time in our episodes, but before things can shift out here, before we can see those wonderful solutions where maybe states and maybe even individual cities and communities start taking ownership of the education of their children and working more holistically so that parents can still meet their obligations to be a part of the workforce while also knowing that their children are being educated more holistically. Before any of that starts to happen out here, we individually have to evaluate our own values and beliefs.
Absolutely.
So if we are still afraid that without some sort of federal mandate that shit will fall apart, or if we still believe that it's impossible to do any change, to make any change on a national level, then that's choosing to perpetuate the system. It has to
Hmm.
start from within and having faith and just doing your own reevaluating of your values and your beliefs about what is a possible way and the right way to handle things. And if you at least change your beliefs and you start to see things and own that there's an issue, and maybe like my daughter goes to public school, she's part of the system, she's engaging in the system, but I'm also very much in her ear about empowering herself and to be able to question the rules. And my daughter is a natural rule follower, which has made parenting easy. But at the same time, I want to be mindful that she needs to understand not all rules are right rules.
Hmm.
So I do my part to at least give her that empowerment that she needs. And that's where it begins. It begins inside of each of us. And eventually those convictions, if we have the convictions that are aligned with creating a more holistic educational system, they will manifest. That is
Yeah,
my belief. But it
I
has to
agree.
start with each of us internally first.
There's so much room to look at what does it mean first to be a competent citizen in our society, and then
Mm,
once we decide that, to then apply that to the student and therefore their educational requirements. So right now, when a kid graduates school, what do we use as a measure of their competence? It's their grade point average. We're
mhm,
literally just looking at what grades did that individual earn on all of their assignments for a period of several years. And if they're doing well on their grades, then we evaluate that person as competent and ready for higher education. But what we aren't taking into account necessarily are intangible indicators that are all largely part of the more feminine aspect that we're discussing being more in balance here. Communicative capabilities, social maturity, the ability to care and have concern about others in your environment, creative capacities. All of
mhm.
these things are relevant, highly, highly relevant aspects of being able to function and correspond with other human beings in society. And we see all the time what happens when you have leaders and CEOs and governmental authorities who don't have these capabilities, who don't have the ability
Mhm.
to negotiate or to sympathize or to listen or to partner with others and collaborate. We are now in a governmental situation that is essentially broken as a result of people not being able to cooperate and get along with other
Mhm.
human beings. Why,
Silos.
why is that? Because we have defined competence with such a narrow range of measurables for decades in this country that we've elevated people who have high linear competency. They've checked the boxes and gotten, they can memorize well and they can spit information out well on a test, but they have very low, in many cases, actual human competency.
Mhm.
We've devalued the actual highly capable human, communicators and interactors, and we've turned those into like, now you're working in a restaurant or you're gonna, do something that is less favorable and less valued and less desirable in society. I'm
Yeah,
by
I
no,
like that you said that.
yeah, I'm by no means trying to say that's true across the board, but the
Mm,
but the fact remains that we could stand to greatly open up the tangible measures and the documented measures of competence that we're evaluating our children with before they come out of school. And if we're measuring them, then we're focused on teaching them. This is the whole
mhm.
point. It's not that we need to so much measure a child's ability to be caring and nurturing, but if we're measuring it in any way, we'd actually be spending time trying to actually teach that child to be more caring and nurturing in the in
Yeah.
the educational environment. So I think right now we've
Yeah.
divested these responsibilities to we've given these responsibilities notionally to the parents and maybe the church leaders and that kind of thing, but I wasn't taught as a kid how to be compassionate and nurturing, not in any way that I could say was a regular and ongoing basis. I don't know if you feel that way too, Joanna, but it's so fractured and broken um, and just irregular in our culture right now that we've got to have some way to bring back in um, those intangible and those felt sense aspects of what it means to actually be a human being.
But you do know, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally in the order of operations.
I
So
I
that's
could
good.
probably still recite. That and many other acronyms from my middle
Yeah.
school and high school days. Yes.
You know, I want to go back because like some of what you were saying about value and we're taking out thinkers and creative, people and their creative abilities out of our system, and therefore we're disservicing ourselves. It's a
Mm,
disservice to society when we take those critical aspects of humanity out and reject
yeah.
it because profit and productivity and all of those things.
Hmm.
And I think it's apparent too when we, for instance, when we put value and esteem on people who have gone and gotten advanced degrees and now they're credible and therefore they are the ones worthy of speaking and their opinions are more worthy than say Joe the plumber or somebody,
Hmm.
right? I have a master's, but I don't ever want to put myself on a pedestal and say my opinion and the things that I say are more worthy than somebody who did not graduate college or high
Hmm.
school or whatever. I never want to be in that kind of mindset because people are all valuable. Everybody's journey has informed a worldview that can educate you no matter what. The
Yeah.
homeless person on the street could probably teach you a lot more about life and
Some of the
experience and
some of the
compassion
some of the brightest
than,
individuals I've ever met have no college
yeah,
experience
they might
whatsoever.
not know the order of operations,
Hmm.
but they will be able to teach you something about life and yourself more
Yeah.
than maybe your math teacher. And so the way I see that is we're so fucking focused on the words that people say in the appropriate way to say the words. I know I can be like that because I'm an English major. And though I don't speak proper grammar, I assure you I write better than I speak. I'm mortified by listening to myself talk now that we're having this podcast. But believe me, I know proper English, but we're so focused on the correctness of that and the term right using the right terms that we don't actually give a fuck about the message.
Hmm.
And then we value words over the message. We are excluding so many in that kind with that kind of value system, we exclude so many members of our society as meh, they're not important. We don't need to hear them, right? Like
Hmm.
most of the working class. Like I was saying, Joe the plumber, like if he had an amazing insight into our educational system or even our government and how this things could be done differently, people would say, "Oh, what do you do? Where
Yeah.
did you go to school? Oh, I'm a plumber. Oh, fuck off."
Hmm.
That's crazy. That's crazy to me that we think we can do that and still function at our highest potential. Because like I heard earlier this morning, and as I told you, people who are in trades like, building houses, painting walls or gardening, landscaping, they deal with different things every day and so have to be creative and be able to think on their feet. That's a good skill. And
Yeah.
the ideas that can come from having those skills and creativity and thinking on your feet, we should hone that and we should mine that. We should listen to some of the ideas that they have, even though they don't have a strong understanding of how certain systems work or whatever, there's still value that can come from those perspectives.
Yeah.
And we don't always have to listen to somebody with a degree, okay? Because their day to day is similar. And so one could argue that they don't have as much opportunity to be creative because they work in such boxes. There's
Yeah.
so much masculine and so many lines and so many, this is the right way to say this and this is the right way to say that. It's like, I'm cursing so much in this episode. I can't help it, but it's like, fuck
It's all
off with all
right.
that.
That's all right. We're bringing out the passion in
Like,
the education episode, so we're having fun with this one.
yeah, because
I think
it's
we've.
not just education. It's like a reflection of us as a society and like all this disempowerment disguised as empowerment. And
Mhm.
it's disturbing. It's very disturbing. And I think that like I was saying, when we discount large swaths of our population, we are doing a disservice. If we think that, oh, but we will be confused, and if we listen to everybody or those people, we don't need to listen to loonies or whatever. That I understand if people are crazy, like legit crazy, we should probably be a little bit more have higher discernment
Mhm.
in what we consume as truth and information. But the problem is a lot of people seem to fall under the category of loony or undeserving of a platform.
Yeah.
And that's a problem because who gets to tell us who's a Looney Tunes and who gets to tell us who's credible? It's always structured around this level of education, or if they come from this part of town, or if they make this much money, that means they're credible. And those systems of discernment are false.
Hmm.
They are false because they don't take into consideration our humanity and other aspects of what it means to be human
Yeah.
and have opinions and have worthy things to say and contribute.
I think it's awesome that folks are starting to see sort of behind the veil of illusion with those factors now, though. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're seeing people call out on social media the BS factors that you're talking about, the shadow aspects of individuals that we're seeing as
Right.
no longer acceptable means for granting automatic deferral of authority to
Right.
folks. And so that's going to have to apply to our education system as well. I think kind of what in summary, what we've sort of been focused on here is that the opportunities are infinite in ways that we could look at uh, the aspects of this system that are broken or presenting challenges right now, and the opportunities for fixing them are extremely great. Everybody, again, whether you have a child in school or you're just interested in the quality of human beings being delivered to this country over the course of the next 20, 30, 40 years, everybody has a vested interest in getting involved and having some of your opinion heard as with regard to this overall situation. Um, I
Yeah,
think it's gonna.
oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was gonna close out and get us onto the tarot topic coming up. I'm looking
Oh,
forward to the
yeah. I
tarot
guess we've been
reading
talking for
today.
quite a bit here, but I just wanted to say that my daughter is in martial arts and she's been in martial arts since she was in kindergarten. It's like
Uh-huh.
an after school program and everything. It's wonderful because they teach her how to fight and all those things,
Yeah.
but they also teach discipline and they also teach when in before they move on to the next belt, they have to have performed all these acts of service,
Oh
and
wow.
there needs to be at least 10 of them. And so I love that. I feel like that's
Yeah.
such a
It's
good way to
holistic.
balance. Yeah, right. It's important to take your what you're learning here and to use it in and to be of service to your community. So
Mm.
when we talk about one of the things wrong with education is standardization, and it's focused on academics, and we measure things with these tests and GPAs, and now you're special because you have this level of education, and your grade is amazing.
Hmm.
But what if we had different metrics, right? And I'm not saying this change can happen overnight, but in fantasy land and what is possible and what I think is possible, what if we had metrics that had to do with how, you know, instead of how well did you perform and learn math, how much did you contribute to your society? Did
Wow.
you volunteer? Did you start initiatives in your community?
Mm.
Stuff like that, where it'll involve a community involvement, because in anything like this, like when you allow your child to help you make a meal, it's going to take longer and it's going to take patience. And I
Hmm.
am working on that. I still try to do everything for my daughter. And I admit I need to really work on having patience to cultivate learning experiences like this. So this would be a community effort where we provide the space and exploration opportunities for our young children to take part and ownership of the community. One thing that I was doing with my daughter during COVID, well, I had to homeschool her preschool. Like I still wanted to educate her right away.
Uh-huh.
And what we would go outside and go on trash walks where we would pick up trash on the ground. And so that was like showing her like we need to clean up our community, and this is everybody's, and we haven't done that in a long time,
Hmm.
sadly. But I'm talking things like that, where we start doing things for our children and instituting initiatives like that promote community involvement
Yeah.
on a very heart-centered way and in a way that isn't a work, that isn't responsibility. In the same way with your daughter, how you helped her to take ownership of her education. It wasn't like you have to do this. It's like this is why. It's that feminine aspect of like because
Yeah.
it's important.
Right.
Because this is what it means to be human. It's not just a requirement you check on the box so you can go to fucking college.
Yeah.
It's something that should happen and it's better for everybody if everybody is involved.
We
You
all
know,
know that
so
we've devalued connectivity. Like, the
yeah.
70s, 80s model of a neighborhood involved people getting outside, riding bikes together, having block parties and connecting with their neighbors. And now we live in a
Hmm.
society where people watch movies in their house and spend all their time on their cell phone and they don't even know their neighbor's name, right? That's
Yeah.
commonplace now. So I'm with you. We got to figure out ways to not only in parenting, but within education as well, is find ways to reestablish. It doesn't have to look like it did 30 years ago, but find new
Hmm.
ways to establish true, meaningful connectivity and service back into our young folks because it's
Yeah.
lost.
It is.
It's just gone.
Well, I
So,
think that's because when education prioritizes things like standardization and economic output over, things that are more aligned with the feminine, such as creativity, emotional intelligence, and holistic well-being, what we're doing is we're perpetuating, a system that puts value on, like their people's utility over their humanity, as I've said
mm,
earlier. And that kind of prioritization, it creates a disconnect. And like you were saying, connection is so important. Well, because in that kind of system that takes away humanity or doesn't value it as much, it connects a disconnect within an individual, within the
yeah,
person,
right.
that then inevitably leads to disconnection between communities. And there you have it. And that's why we have such a divided country now.
Yeah.
It begins inside. And I think the way our education system works right now, even though it reflects society's values, it perpetuates it at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to be done to help our kids reconnect, but I think that a kid or anybody in society that feels like they are purposeful and part of something bigger than themselves continues to contribute, doesn't cause trouble, and continues to look for ways to better their society and not just cling to possessions and find ways to get their own needs met. So this is a big
Yeah.
challenge. It's a big apple to bite. It's a large elephant to consume, as they say. But we're going to go ahead and challenge all of our listeners out there. Again, if you have
Hmm.
any sort of ideas or imaginative uh, thoughts on ways that we can improve our educational system or just better improve the way that we're teaching our kids these days, chime in the comments, get your information out there on social media and talk to friends and neighbors and teachers and those that are participating in the system right now. Get your voice heard. That's the only way we're gonna to really make a difference with this is to get the voices of the many heard over the dictates of the few.
Yeah, because I know we've said a lot of things of like, oh my gosh, if we go down this path, it doesn't really bode well because if we're,
Hmm.
it's not empowering, it's very disempowering, and there's just it's very shadowy. But
Yeah.
the good news is that discussing this topic, here on this podcast and you with each other and with us, it allows us to shine a light on these imbalances and ask the
Mhm.
question, what kind of society do we want to create? And how can education align with that vision? And the way it's structured right now, it does reflect our societal values. And I think a lot of us are beginning to wake up to the fact that it's not it. This
Yeah.
isn't it. This does not align with what's in my heart and what I feel is to be right. And so by fostering conversations around the need for balance, like between structure and creativity, intellect and emotion, and masculine, or in other words, masculine and feminine energies,
Hmm.
we can inspire collective solutions that can serve the greater good and that aligns with most of what we feel inside. And I feel that most of us in society know that these things are not right.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that is because of the imbalances within each of us that are just coming out and being projected into our reality.
I hate getting a bad deal, and I feel like we're paying a lot of money for a broken system right now. So
Yeah, this is
if
true.
for no other reason than just to get a bargain, we should figure out a better way to spend our
Yeah,
education
we need a
money.
refund. I need a refund.
I'll add that in my I'll add that request in my tax return this year. See what happens.
Yeah, you know what? Let me I don't think so. I don't think I need to pay these taxes
Yeah,
because A, B, and Z.
yeah. You first. Let me know how that goes.
Maybe not. I am still very bound to that fear that the
Uh,
IRS will come and arrest me.
I hear you. I hear you. Me too. All right, that was fun. That was
Ooh,
fun.
that was amazing.
What do we got next? We're gonna do a reading?
Yes. So let's go
Okay,
ahead and let's get grounded for a second. That was a
cool.
lot.
Yeah.
And it's time for us
Dis
to have our
dis
tarot message now.
dismantling entire systems takes it out of you a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, but it's necessary to talk about this just
Yeah.
because it's uncomfortable or it's scary to think about system changes at that level. It's imperative for our evolution. And I know most of us feel like shit ain't right. And
It
so,
ain't
what are we
right.
going to do about it? Are we going to keep
Yeah.
doing the same thing or are we going to do the hard work, the good work, the busy work of conversing, having conversations openly without fear, and just knowing that we all want better
Yeah.
for our children, for ourselves? So, it begins
Starts
with
with a
that. It begins
discussion.
with you. It does.
Right.
And it starts with you individually. So,
Oh yeah.
all right. Let me go ahead and shuffle my cards and get grounded. I wonder what we're gonna get today because we've sure got a lot.
Something
Um,
super poignant. I feel it.
yeah, I feel like something's coming here. Let's see. Hmm. Oh, okay.
Is there a professor card? That would be funny if we got something related to education today.
It would be like the Hierophant,
Yeah.
I think. But I get, the way I do my readings, it's like the cards, I get three usually, and they speak to me. Okay, so we have four today. Four wanted to come out. So let's
Hmm.
see what we get. So with four, there's not really center cards. So we'll see how the message comes here. Oh my gosh, you're not gonna believe lovers came up again.
Oh wow. That's all three so far, right?
Yeah. It's in reverse though, so we'll see what message I get here.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay, so the cards I got was Queen of Pentacles upright, Lovers in reverse, Nine of Wands in reverse, and the Nine of Cups in reverse. So the message that I'm getting here is that the Queen of Pentacles, it's a feminine energy, and it's like having authority and ownership of our life here on Earth and what we're
Hmm.
doing. And it's saying it's possible, but then it's followed by the Lovers in reverse. But first, we have to make a lot of decisions internally and balancing the energies within. And we are so close with this Nine of Wands in reverse. It's saying it is absolutely possible. We're getting close to it. It's just more and more of us have to do this work
Hmm.
of the inner balance and reckoning that I was getting with the judgment card last week. But this is about making the right choices that support a balance within that obviously, like I was saying earlier, will reflect without. But this is a message of, each of us, but also with this Nine of Cups, once we're able to do that, because we have the ability to do it here with the Queen of Pentacles, we have the ability and we're moving towards that. We can make all of these dreams and the things that satisfy our emotional needs, our emotional well-being, but spiritual too, that we have access to this. We can do this. It's very
Hmm.
positive, and it is saying that we are close. Um, but with it being a Queen of Pentacles instead of like say a King of Pentacles, I do sense that we have to kind of have more of that feminine grace through the doing, through the the authority that we have over our lives and what we're doing. So that's kind of like a more like higher message. But if we're thinking about during the week, say what we can do now, like practically on the ground, it is being mindful of and having ownership over what you're seeing on a daily day to day. And again, there's such a focus here for people who are watching this. For me to draw the lovers now 3 times, it's really those of you who are watching here, I sense that you do seek to have a better world, to be able to be a part and do your part in creating this better world that's more balanced. So
Mm,
thank you so much for that and for wanting that because we need that. And so you're going to be a lot more mindful in the things that you see and the choices that you make and it will bring us much closer to the fulfillment of our emotional fulfillment as a collective that has to begin individually. So if I were to give you something to think about, given this message, it's just, are your eyes open? Do you have authority over what you're experiencing, or are you giving that authority to someplace else? We're so close. We're so close to kind of getting it right and getting on path to the fulfillment of what will make us truly happy. But it does require your eyes to be open and awake.
that's amazing. I think there's so much that was obviously relevant to that conversation there, and
Yeah.
you know, it's no secret that those that are of any sort of spiritual lean right now are sort of recognizing that we are at a end point, a culmination point, and a readiness for a shift into a new way of living and being and growing together as individuals in this collective world. And
Yeah.
it's hard. Change is difficult. No matter if it's positive or negative. Like even positive change is hard because it comes with so much uncertainty and turbulence and all these things that are being unearthed in our public awareness and many things that have probably not yet been unearthed, but we can sort of sense within us are coming. You know, it's like, oh, this is gonna get. It's like that last wave in the ocean that you know is gonna tumble you, but then you're gonna end up on the shore and walking away, and everything's gonna be fine. So I think that that message resonates pretty strongly, and I think just tuning in and participating in a conversation like this is a willingness to have
Yes.
your present perspectives expanded and have your current belief systems at least questioned by you. You know, that's all that matters. We're not trying to convince anybody of anything. It's just participate, think to yourself, what do I think? How do I believe? And am I willing to perceive and view a world that's different than the way that it's been built and architected so far? That's
Yeah,
all that
I
matters.
feel that energy very strongly. I still feel it where those of you who are watching and want this so much too, you're being recognized right now in this reading. It just feels like, yeah, some of you are very passionate about this as well. And I really thank you so much
Yeah.
for honoring that and for, being open to do the work. You're responsible. You're a part of the work to get it done. So thank
Yeah.
you.
This is going to take a lot of folks, a lot of souls contributing focus and energy. So I echo that. Thanks.
Yeah. Oh, wow. 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 What a
Good
wonderful
stuff.
episode. I feel very good about
Yeah.
what's happened, even though I must have dropped the F-bomb so many times.
We're gonna have a swear jar in future
Oh
episodes. And
no.
we'll make a donation to the renovation of education in our country every time Joanna curses.
Yeah, 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 yeah. All right, guys. Oh, thank you so much for tuning in again to this week's episode. We appreciate you and we hope you've enjoyed this time with us. So don't, if we gave you something to think about and to ponder and something for the week, please do us a favor and like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another episode. And also, if we want to connect with you. We want to hear your thoughts. We want this to be a dynamic conversation, not just between me and Ken, although I enjoy talking to Ken. We also want to hear some of your thoughts and your input.
Yeah.
And so leave that in the comments too. We want to know, what do you think education should prioritize? expressed what we think. What about you? What do you think? Do you think it's fine the way it is? Or do you think maybe different priorities there needs to be a shift in priorities? And also, what changes, if any, would you like to see in our current education system? Tell us about that. Because maybe I'm sure that there's people out there that are a lot more versed in the education system than we are. Um, you know, so let us know, teachers,
Mm.
administrators, if you in your mind have considered, man, I wish it would be like this, and then
Yeah.
things could change. Like you would have a better idea of what those changes could look like, and we would
Or
love to know.
what have you tried? What
Yeah.
experiments have you done and seen go well or poorly? Like share those with us too.
Yeah, and also don't forget, you can always share any ideas for potential topics for the show. So, Ken,
Absolutely.
speaking of other topics, tell us about what we're doing next week.
Oh my goodness, this is the one I've been waiting for from the very beginning because I get to just zone out and not think, and you got to do all the hard work. So that's going to be that might become the template for like all our future episodes or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so next
Yeah.
week, folks, we're gonna go off the freaking map, and we're gonna do what's gonna be like an every 4 week, hopefully, process here where I'm gonna take some plant-based sacred medicine,
Mm-hmm.
and Joanna's gonna set the scene and potentially ask questions or intuit whatever comes, or maybe do a tarot reading, and I'm gonna offer reflection based on what typically for me and hopefully many people in that space is a bit of an altered state of understanding, and we're just going to see what comes out of that. So, hopefully,
Yeah.
no pressure on me here, but hopefully some fun and yeah, I can't promise anything in the order of enlightening conversation, but it'll at least be humorous. I can guarantee you that. So,
Yeah, it's basically like we're going to the lab, and this is the
yeah.
practical application of the feminine and the masculine at
Mm,
play,
mm,
and where you are going to be manifesting the feminine in that you're going to be kind of, you know, disheveled in a way,
yeah.
or you're not hindered by, oh, I got to stay in these lines
Mm,
here. You're just going to be full exploration of the feminine. And
yeah.
I, being sober, am going to provide the structure for our conversation. And we'll see. No pressure, please, no pressure. You don't have to come up with some freaking, you know, uh, Confucius level insight or something, right? It just needs to be you because
It's all
you are divine and you have some stuff here, and we're going, whatever it is,
yeah.
it's going to be real, and that's what
This is
matters.
this is openness and receptivity and trust, and I'm totally willing to do that and looking forward to
Yeah.
the opportunity to. I've never done it on a recording before, but that'll be exciting.
Hey,
So
yeah, yeah,
let's have
yeah.
fun with
So
it.
it'll be fun because then I'll provide that structure and we'll see the energies at play. We have
Yeah,
no idea how this is going to go, guys. So,
uh,
you know, have
yeah,
mercy on us, I guess,
yeah, yeah.
as
It
we
could be
explore this. Hold space for this exploration in
for
the same way
sure.
that I will be holding space for Ken in his exploration. So, I mean, we'll see how it goes. I'm excited, and I'm excited for when it's my turn. So, to close out our show, we want to remind you guys again that every moment offers us a choice, whether to build a bridge or to burn one down.
And as co-creators of our shared reality, let's choose wisely.
Until next week, guys, see you later. Bye.
We'll see you next time. Take care.